Okay, we'll get started.
Is there enough?
Oh, is it 6:30?
Yeah. we might as well.
Okay, thank you.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes,
You know, there is near enough that he can promote.
yeah, I can do it. No, I can.
John, up there?
He's on path, I think.
He's on path,
They have an
okay.
appointment to go, but instead he didn't. Yeah, that was very good.
I want to just make sure before I have to go over
All
there.
right. Should be-
Well said.
John, you should be able to accept an invitation, yeah.
Okay, you've got the roll.
I got it.
Okay. And can I have a motion on the minutes from June 21st?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second,
Are there any additions or corrections or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Okay.
John,
Any
can
opposed?
John hear us?
What?
I was wondering if John could hear us because I can't hear him.
he's muted.
Oh, he's muted.
Well, John,
On his
And
end.
his
maybe.
yeah,
camera's
his-
off.
John, you unmute yourself.
Can he hear us?
Just call Pat right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Pat, how do I do this?
Now what do I
He's
do?
good, he's good.
Hey, there you
There
go.
he is.
There he is.
Okay.
heard that.
Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anybody from the public at present that wants to make a comment?
Doesn't look like there's anybody online.
Okay, nobody online.
No.
All right, then our first item on the agenda is our Board of Education. to discuss Their labor negotiations with us.
Thank you for having us, Karen Harper. Thank you, everybody. It's good to see you. It's been a while. We are just here because we sent a letter to Chairman Carver, as we do all the time when we are going into negotiations with our teachers, inviting the Board of Finance in accordance with Connecticut State Law 10-153D to send someone to observe the negotiations. And so we're here tonight just to formally present that. We have to convene by law, by 8/3, August 3rd. We actually have our first meeting planned tomorrow at 4 p.m. at central office, 50 Sheffield Street. By September 27th, we have to have chosen a mediator if we have not settled the contract. And by October 17th, we would need to have chosen the arbitrators to go into arbitration. Just as a reminder, teachers in the state of Connecticut, we go to binding arbitration, there's no strike. So it moves very quickly. It's 45 days from start of negotiations to arbitration. That's the timeline.
It's very, very different on the education side than it is on the municipal side. We can wait for 9 months,
Right.
but they get their contracts decided.
Right,
Quickly.
certified, that is, yeah. So, yeah, we'll move very quickly. We'll probably have, typically, we haven't decided because what we'll do at tomorrow's meeting is we'll all bring our calendars and come up with dates to meet. But typically, we meet 3 or 4 times. Sometimes they're lengthy. I mean, we've been at central office as late as 2 or 3 in the morning. But they are not lots of meetings. So we invite the Board of Finance to send a representative to observe. And happy to take questions.
Does anybody have any questions for the Board of Education about the process?
Do you have different lengths on the contracts, or is the contract always a certain length?
We've been doing 3 years, but people do extensions. You will see 4-year teacher contracts. You also will see a 1-year contract in certain times too, when people are trying to get through something. Happened during COVID, people did extensions or did shorten contracts.
Anybody else?
A question here.
Go ahead.
This is just a teacher's contract, not the admin contract or a custodian
Yeah,
contract or
just
anything?
teachers. Yeah, those are all negotiated separately.
Okay. How much time for the next contract issue to come up for you after you negotiate the teachers?
I think, just the custodian, that paras will be next again. Yeah, paras will be next, custodians, and then custodians, and that'll be for another, we won't start that for another year.
Okay, so it's not piggyback, that you don't have that
No.
backed up on you at one time.
No,
Okay,
no, typically not.
thank you.
Brad has said that he, as the liaison to the Board of Ed from our board, said that he'd be willing to attend the negotiations on our behalf. Does anybody?
Very good. Is there anyone else? I mean,
Okay.
You've had two in the past, right?
Okay.
They've had two also, if anybody else wanted to. In case Brad couldn't make it, or, you know,
Don't cancel.
but.
Don't cancel if I can't make
Yeah.
it. Is it the entire board of ed that's there?
No, there's a negotiating team. So the board chose its negotiating team. They actually have standing committees for this. And there are 3 members of the board who will be serving on the negotiating team.
Any further discussion? Otherwise, we will.
So can I just make one more comment?
Sure.
So you will have to disclose to the other side who is on your team, I believe, correct? Typically, that's how. So will you be disclosing that Brad Thorpe is on the team? All right, and from what I understand, we ran into this problem. If no one else volunteers now, typically the door shuts in terms of the team. So that, we ran into that where we're like, you know, we wanted to add, you know, someone else came in the second meeting and the union objected, saying, no, you can't do that. And we're like, all right.
So he won't be identified as a member of the negotiating team.
Not-
He'll be
right.
identified as an
An
observer.
observer, but
Does anybody
it
else want to volunteer?
I don't know, maybe not. I mean, it was, we ran into this problem with Board of Finance,
Why don't we
actually
do
with
this?
Board of Finance members,
When we do this, when we do an alternate.
or just do someone else.
If I
They don't
can't
have to
make it-
show up. They don't even have to show up if you,
Yeah.
if someone else wants to do it, you know, and
Can you do that? Identify somebody as an alternate?
I think we can certainly propose it tomorrow night. Things have been pretty amicable, you know, and people have not always been able to make it to everything, including our own negotiating team, and there's not been an issue of pushback. We have a new person on the OSEA side. They have a new representative, so I'm not quite sure, you know, how things will go, but I think we can certainly say, this is Brad, and there may also be.
And for those of you who haven't been in, you've been in on it before. Yeah. Anyone who hasn't been in on any labor negotiation, sometimes it's, you know, it's a process. It might be interesting to see. I mean, many of you have been, so. Anyway, I'm just.
I'll do it. I'll, if you want a second person.
Okay, good.
We
were all gonna keep talking until
Are
somebody.
you gonna get me? You done taking
Yeah,
that?
right.
His ankle's bleeding, he's ready.
So are we just saying they're both gonna be, or are we considering him an alternate?
Yeah,
Which
I-
is
Why don't we just say they're both
Yeah.
our
Okay,
representatives?
seems easier. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Already got promoted.
then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the American Rescue Plan Act and appropriation.
Yeah. So, just as a quick update, the total appropriation is, as you can see, it's almost $3 million. It's like 1.94 or something along those lines. I'm sorry, 2.964. We just put in, I think today or yesterday, they requested that we had to, oh, hi. We just did it the other day, or today or yesterday.
Today, yeah.
Today, to request the second tranche. So that will be coming, that's been completed, so that money is on its way, just so you know. You know, it's not imperative that we have action tonight, it's recommended that we have action tonight. Not imperative, if you want to consider it to your next meeting. There may be additional requests at the next meeting, it's possible. There certainly will be many additional requests at some point. As you can see, the first 8 were approved by the Board of Selectmen. And just so you know, so we are operating under Treasury guidelines. You can lift the chair up if you
I
want.
know,
It's right
she
here.
was so short there.
Right here on the side. No, not that one, the other, right there,
Right
that.
there, okay.
And stand up.
No, there you go.
And it felt awkward for me. We're operating under Treasury guidelines. There are so many forms of government across the United States, and this went to counties, towns, cities, large cities, small cities, that borough Fenwick was, so the Treasury guidelines couldn't identify every form of government and how every form of government should approve these funds. So there's no clear guide to say, hey, in Old Saybrook, it should go from the Board of Selectmen to the Board of Finance, back to the Board of Selectmen to town meeting. Our auditors asked us, actually, they said, hey, who approved the first 247? And I told Leanne, I said, look, the Board of Selectmen did. We feel this was vetted appropriately, and and they didn't really push back on it. So we don't think there's an issue with the Board of Selectmen doing it. However, I have come around to this process being probably one that is preferable, maybe best practices, I'm guessing. And we have 2 members of the ARPA committee that will be making further recommendations to the Board of Selectmen on this board, Brad and Bruce. So as you can see, we made the first tranche to help us get hybrid meetings. We did a water project on Evans Lane, which was originally estimated at $77,000, which ended up being less, so we will return some money. I want to come back to the Cape Chamber of Commerce. These were net losses, just so you know, 23.9. The original request was a gross loss number, and it was a lot larger. Old Saybrook Historical Society, Soup Kitchen, Garden Club, and then that this money is not for economic development, it's for economic recovery. So there was some money allotted towards that. And then more recently, the committee recommended, the ARPA committee, ad hoc committee, recommended that the Lions Club receive an appropriation of $2,800, and the estuary, exactly for the purposes stated herein, $10,000. If either member of the ARPA committee wants to further address that, they may. So that's where we are at this point. So let me back up just a little bit. This committee that Brad and Bruce are on are doing really, as for any committee, it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of smart people. So there's a lot of ideas, and and to actually get to where we need to go, there's been an incredible amount, and I commend both these guys, an incredible amount of thought and time put into this to get where we are. And you're going to see many recommendations probably coming in September, October. There's an application out there, many of you may have seen it, for folks who may want to apply for ARPA funds. We are not behind the 8 ball in the fact that we have not distributed the money. There was an article in a magazine, it's sitting on my desk, saying exactly that, how ARPA funds, what are towns doing with ARPA funds? We don't know yet because a lot of them haven't been distributed. And you occasionally will read articles about how this county, the state, so there's all this money left. The money doesn't have to be allocated until the end of 24 and spent until the end of 26. So I think a thoughtful process is a good thing, and we are being deliberate and we are being thoughtful. However, I also think this shouldn't go on through 24 necessarily. And in addition to that, there's been a document created for each recipient saying, hey, we're giving you this money, we can audit it if we need to, and you're agree that you're gonna be subject to an audit if we feel the money has not been spent appropriately. That form is out there, the application is out there. Here we are with an ask for ratification of what has previously been allocated. The 247 has been distributed. The 12.8 has not been distributed, but a lot more money will be distributed. So it is my intent as first selectman to bring it to the Board of Selectmen, to bring future allocations to the Board of Finance, and then take this to town meeting. I think it will be good for our public to see how these monies are being spent and to approve them. And I think they will be approved. Eventually what you're going to see is a lot of mental health, social services requests come through, possibly some projects for different folks in town, elderly, the young, that were particularly affected by COVID. Remember, the monies have to be tied back to COVID. Just with regard to the Kate, I want to, they opened their museum, and this was partly a contribution for lost revenue, partly a contribution to increased tourism, which is an allowable use of the money. I was at Graham Nash's concert last night at the Cape, and I was at one of the reception areas, and I was talking to Wayne Harms and Brett Elliott, the executive director, Brett of the Cape. And before Brett got into the room, Wayne Harms came up to me and said, has Brett told you about what's going on at this museum? I don't know how many of you have been through the museum. It's beautifully done. Whether it's your thing or not, it's beautifully done. And I said, no, I haven't talked to him about it yet. They're averaging 60 to 80 people a day. They're averaging going through that museum. And so I spoke to Jennifer today, and I asked her to get in touch with Judy about putting together, because a lot of people are coming in and we didn't know what to get. We didn't know what we were going to get. We didn't know what kind of reception we were going to get. But it was so well advertised, the opening of the theater. It was on all the news stations. It was in the Hartford Current, that we're now getting buses coming in. And not necessarily like the bus you see out there right now, which is Graham Nash's tour bus, but smaller buses that are maybe bringing in some folks from, whether it could be Essex Meadows, it could be, senior centers from Middletown maybe, or from other places coming in, and they're getting large groups of people. And some of them are saying, what should we do after we leave here? So we're going to put together something, and not one of these brochures that's three-folded, that has a map and
Hollywood stars.
Exactly.
I hate those things.
But maybe something that says, hey, go to Saybrook Point, play around a putt-putt, or here are the restaurants on Main Street, or we're going to come up with some ideas. The walk, the Historical Society walk, if people are able to do that, or maybe they'll come back and do that. So it's having a benefit that we weren't sure, but it is having they're astonished at the number of folks they're getting coming through the museum, which is great. That's great news. More people in town, and obviously they're spending time on Main Street. I'm guessing that some of those tour buses are maybe going to Penny Lane Pub or giving folks 3 hours and we'll meet back here. So,
Question, Carl.
Yeah.
Have you ever given some consideration to like what they do on Mount Washington, where they give you a CD, and as you go along the trip, they give you the history of everything, and maybe we do it on the town of Old Saybrook and give them a map, they follow their way, and as you're going along the route, it tells you where the different skirmishes were and what General Clark House was.
that would be a project.
It would be, but you got money now for it.
Yeah.
And it would bring more in and maybe push people towards our little businesses too.
Yeah. Haven't thought of that, and I don't know. I mean, we could think about that and determine what a project like that might
Just
cost.
an idea.
Yeah, no, it's from the idea guy. It's an idea, and it is. It's a good idea. I haven't thought about that, and maybe that is something we should consider. So in any event, here we are, what's in front of you. Again, I don't, Bruce and Brad, would you agree it's not critical that it be approved tonight, but it's preferred that it is?
I think it would be a good idea too, because more than likely, we're not gonna see anything else until after September 1st. So why not, this is what it is at this point, let's get this done, and then after September 1st, there'll be another group. So I would think doing it tonight would make a lot of sense, that way then you're freed up to go to town meeting and make it happen.
I had a question, Carl. I see that Senator Needleman gave $114,000 to the Cape.
Where do you see that?
Devin Carney sent it to me,
I don't know anything about that.
and.
Wait, he made a donation?
A
I don't
private
know.
donation?
No, for state money.
Oh,
Well, the
He
kid,
didn't give it, he.
yeah.
No, they,
Yeah.
As a state
It was
senator,
it was
he
a
organized delivering as your state senator.
Yeah.
One of the things he delivered was $114,000.
So-
He didn't do it.
the kid received money from many different sources during COVID, yes.
Right.
And that, I believe they got money from the Office of the Arts and Humanities, and that made, but they got 400,000 from the Save Our Stages Act.
At some point, I'd like to see an accounting of how much money the Cape actually gets. And then at some time, when we are looking at the budget where we support the building over there, whether or not that could be changed also, so we're not spending money on our electricity and other things over there if they're making a large amount of money there.
Well, the money they received, like that money, and in addition to the Save Our Stages money, is COVID money because they were unable to have shows and they had no revenue. So it supplanted revenue. We're probably in the middle of a 20-year lease. And basically that lease renews at the option of the Cape, not of the town. And we are obligated on those costs and expenses, the infrastructure of the building.
Right, I understand that, but it's always something to look at, because if we're putting a new roof on it, new columns out there, and we keep putting money into the physical building all the time,
Yeah.
Some of these grants may be able to give us relief for the building also.
If there is a larger capital project coming up, and I thankfully, like, for instance, they're putting a new chiller in, a new air conditioning chiller. And they're getting that money, it's being paid for by a grant, or donations, actually through, I think from the Neighborhood Assistance Act last year, and mostly Sunny Whalen Engineering. So they're pretty good about their infrastructure, but Tom, believe me, we look for grants all the time. And honestly, right now, I'm spending half my days talking about grants because there is so much money out there right now.
Well, I thought you were a marketing major a couple of minutes ago, talking about everything in the town.
But I don't know that we'll ever, what we're paying for is basically HVAC services, the electricity meter. We don't necessarily have capital projects in the budget for the Cape. Well, we don't, not necessarily, we don't at all. We just have operational expenses mostly, and some maintenance, a small maintenance item, but if there's another large capital project, and the Cape has contributed, just so you know, and maybe it's good to have Brett in here, the Cape has contributed to the infrastructure that the town owns. We haven't done everything. The Cape has contributed with their reserves pre-COVID, they did that. And they split a couple projects with us.
Well, right, a lot of times we just take it for granted and come up with each meeting or something, so I said, well, we'll expose more of it, make it more transparent that the Cape is a positive entity to the town, not just a money taker.
Because they're leasing the building, right?
They lease the building
Right, so we're responsible to.
for the building.
Right.
But they have
To a degree, right.
the interior of the building,
Right.
so
Okay.
they've done.
They've done some things that we've helped them with, but it's also helped them make it a better place.
Absolutely, 100%. But the amount of work they've done on the interior of the building is staggering. I mean, you go to a show like last night, hot night, no matter what kind of air conditioning you put in there, when you have hot lights on the artist, it's not good. Those lights have all been switched up. That was a $500,000 project, and they did it. So those are all LED lights that are not baking the artist, especially an 80-year-old artist like Graham Nash.
Is he really?
And the acoustics in there are outstanding. I mean, it's a very, and it's a lot that this board has done. I mean, there's no doubt this board has contributed to Kate. That theater, you know, the previous first selectman lost a lot of political capital getting that across the finish line. The flip side of that is it probably needed $500,000 more to get the job done right. And that was the legacy, unfortunately.
So the poles and the lights out front, it's beautiful.
So that, I don't know of any, and I should hold my breath when I say it, but I don't know of any issues going on in that theater right now that I'm thinking, oh boy, I'm gonna have to go to the Board of Finance in 23 with that. I don't know of any. I did know of several of them. I knew they were coming. The roof is in good condition, the gutters are done, the pillars are done, the front stairs are done. You know, it's been painted on the outside. It's in good shape, and on the inside, it's in good shape. Anyway, here we are, a little off topic.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve what was recommended on the second page of Carl's memo, all three items.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, why, I mean, we talked about this originally on why you wouldn't come to us and let us know what you're gonna spend our money on, with concerns that at some point in time, things that are purchased or used by some of the town organizations, which will be coming down the pike, I'm sure, where we might have to have some added cost into our budget for the future. Is there anything here that is going to require a future funding to keep it going?
So we talked about that ad nauseum at the meetings. The only thing I can think of is if we have to replace this TV at some point because the technology's gotten better. Okay, so but we've had to do this. This has been outstanding.
Oh,
with the hybrid. So the answer on everything else in front of you is a absolute no. Okay.
You've got dread as you watch go around.
I just, you know, because
No.
we asked the question originally, you said, no, you don't need to prove anything, and it's like, now you want us to ratify it, I'm like, wait a minute.
Well,
We didn't have anything to do with
you know,
this.
I've had a little bit of a evolution in my thinking on this. I have. I mean,
Okay.
you know, originally I'm like, I don't think I need to go to the Board of Finance, and I've kind of just come around to the process. Especially now that we have an ARPA committee to involve everybody in the process. So I'm just telling you right now, I've evolved in my thinking on this, and whether that's a mea culpa or not, I sit here and I'm telling you.
That's good.
I also think the government, with the way they're, I don't know what the word I want to use, ratifying all these improvements or changes, they have to be approved by the government. So they could come back and say, that doesn't fit or doesn't work. And then at that point, it would be changed.
Yeah.
So it's like an audit. It's got to be audited through the government.
Oh, they're gonna come and audit these, no
It's
doubt,
helpful for me.
at some point.
There's too many times to audit, so I don't know how many they're gonna audit, but
It's 3,000.
There's some already having issues.
Or 200.
you know, there was a bill that didn't pass at the state legislature that the legislature would have to approve every expenditure in every town. It didn't pass. And, you know, all the towns are like, what? Just because what happened in West Haven, you're gonna like do this to every town? So anyway, that's where we are. All the other requests will come before the Board of Finance.
Is this the first $260,000 out of the first of the 1.5 million?
Yeah.
This is the beginning
yeah,
of
this-
all of this.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
0.8, isn't it?
Yeah.
2.9.
Has Parks and Rec come to the ARPA committee
They
yet?
have not.
Well,
Well,
Parks
yes,
and Rec
they
did.
did. They
Parks and
came
Rec
to the
did.
ARPA committee,
Right,
yes.
and they made a great presentation, and there are some very interesting projects.
Yeah.
Does it have to do with their master plan that they put together a few years back? I
It
think
does
they
not.
came to the Board of Finance with that a few years back, right? And it was approved.
These are, I would say they're probably elements, but they weren't tied directly to the master plan. But I think if you looked at them side by side, you'd see where they were from.
Do we have any other discussion? Call for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Sorry, what?
Opposed?
No, John said aye.
That was John.
John's opposed?
No, John.
Yeah, I said
John-
aye.
He
He's
said aye.
delayed.
He's a little behind.
It's a long way from cricket court.
But it's all yay, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
all you. Okay.
All right, by the way, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Move on to the treasurer's report.
Can I make, I'm sorry, can I go back one? Carl sometimes is somewhat modest, but I just want to bring the shoreline soup kitchen to everybody's attention, whereas that wasn't a $10,000 to replace funds. That was
It
actually
wasn't.
Old Saybrook taking the lead in bringing a number of towns together, all contributing 10,000 out of their ARPA money to get a new van, right?
A
To
new
be-
refrigerated food truck.
Yeah, to be able to deliver. And so it's a pat on the back to Old Saybrook for getting that done.
So Amy Holland sent a email 2 years ago, whenever, to all the towns in their catchment area. And I did volunteer to take the lead on that, and we've had more than a few towns volunteer to step up and do it. So it's been good.
Good.
Thanks.
Okay, treasurer?
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna say about the ARPA money, I think, Carl, it's great that you're taking it to the Board of Finance and to the town meeting. It's a good check and balance.
Yeah, it is.
And I've been reading about my old town, Wallingford. They can't get out of their way. They're just fighting about what legislative body should it go to the mayor, should it go to the town council? They're fighting constantly in the paper. It's hysterical to actually read about it. So it's really funny to see how other towns are really struggling. They can't even seem to get past square one. And here we are doing a great job. So I want to commend you.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
think the whole committee is doing a great job.
Thanks.
I may not attend them, but I read everything you guys put out. So you're doing a good job. Treasurer's watch. All right. So our books are, I think you're all aware, our books are not closed. Leanne will get into that. So we're just going to do a basic, quick little report for June. So our fiscal year to date, the town has received revenues of $1,069,369 in excess of the full budget amount, or $48,257,087 in total receipts, or 102.3% of the amount budgeted. When comparing our performance to last fiscal year, we are running ahead of where we were at the end of last fiscal year, as you can see on our executive summary report. Sorry, I should have said that. We are looking at the executive summary report. I just write myself notes and I go right off of that. Last fiscal year to date ending, we had received 101.3% of budgeted revenues versus our 102.3. So we're 1% ahead of last year. And then next, we're going to move just down to our authorized investment section on our sheet there. As of the end of June, the town had 26.5 million in its bank accounts. And as I think most of you are aware, the markets are still very volatile, and the Federal Reserve is expected to meet next week, raising interest rates again, probably maybe a full point this time. And that will bode well for us for interest rates, as the STIP account will probably move high, up higher again. And our interest rates on our bank accounts, as you can see, are doing somewhat nicely. We are on a steady course with our investment portfolio with our treasury bonds. We have nothing new really to report with that at this time. we have seen a lot of movement in the stiff rate. The average last month was 1.5, and today it's currently at 1.57. The investment committee is always reviewing the bank rates as well as cash needs to determine if we can switch some funds to stiff. If we do, we could get these funds out, as I've been telling you, with 1 day's notice. Webster Bank will pay us the stiff rate in arrears, so you'll see the 0.56 next month, which should move up to basically the 1.15. So we're constantly playing around with that. So the pension plan, not as rosy. As the end of June, we received our report from Morgan Stanley, the town's investment manager, about our performance. The town pension plan is down minus 14.78% fiscal year to date versus its benchmark of minus 12.80. Over the 3-year horizon, the town plan has returned 4.31 versus its benchmark of 4.20. Fire department pension plan is down minus 13.52% fiscal year to date and up 4.77% over the 3-year horizon versus its benchmark of 5.37%. Pension plans have been volatile over the market period. Overall, the treasurer's responsibility is to oversee all our monies belonging to the town. So as of June 30, we have a total cash balance of 26.5 million, total pension balance of 25.5 million, for total assets under management of 52 million. Page 2 of our treasurer's report, which breaks down our revenue. Tax revenues were up 42,000 for the month, bringing the fiscal year-to-date total to 46,209,451, collecting 555,734 more than our budgeted goal for fiscal year 2022. Taxes are currently being collected for the fiscal year of 2023. In terms of local revenues, the town collected 133,000, with building permits and recording fees still being our primary driver for local revenue, but mini golf is very close behind, and beach passes at Harvey's Beach are picking up as everyone enjoys Old Saybrook, everything has to offer for the summer. Overall, for the month of June, the town collected 133,618 in local revenues, bringing our revenue collection to 48.2 million fiscal year to date, for a total revenue surplus of 1,069,369 as of June 3rd. That's it, folks. Any questions?
I had a question.
Sure.
I was looking at some of the percentages and the numbers on the revenues on effective June 30th. And I must be multiplying incorrectly or something, because I see there's a discrepancy between the budget and the money received and what the percentage is. Are we rounding effectively here? Because if I multiply this number times that number, it comes out a little bit more than that number, so.
What are you multiplying?
He's multiplying the 47,187 to the 102.3, but the 102.3 is the 48 million.
Yeah, if you're doing it backwards.
So you're doing it backwards.
So
This
you-
is what we budgeted. We budgeted 47 million.
Yep.
But we've received 48 million, which gives us the 102,
Okay,
okay? This would give us 100% revenue. This gave us 102.3% revenue.
okay,
So that's how we got that
okay,
percent,
that's good.
okay?
Good.
But it's a good, that's a good catch.
Just seemed a little bit different, that's all.
It's all right.
And I have another question.
Sure.
On the 1.2 million for the ARPA cash, where's that being kept?
That's in treasury bonds right now.
Okay,
Very short term.
okay,
And when we're ready to spend it, it will be available to us. We still have to receive our second lot, which Leanne called today about, and I think we're receiving it.
Well, I
shortly.
did it online. They don't tell you.
They don't
it's
make
coming
phone,
in
they don't
online.
receive phone calls.
Yeah,
at the
but it's
state.
at US Bank, it's their
so out of
custodian
the
agent.
1.2 million, we're gonna dispense or disperse the money that, or you've already dispersed that?
Some of it's already, 247 has already been
Been
dispersed.
dispersed, okay. So then we add the 247 back to the 1.2. Less interest or what we get on the bonds and stuff would tell us how much we got in the first amount.
Right,
Correct.
1.4 something,
Okay, good.
1.462 or something like that.
So the good news is we can make money on it.
We're
You
gonna make
can't
a
always
little
make
money
money
on
on
it,
a loan,
yeah,
on
right.
money like that, but we can make money on it. So,
Why not?
you know, we're gonna have 2.5 million in the bank. We're probably gonna make it 1% on it.
Exactly.
So that's not bad.
It's not bad.
25 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Better
know,
than nothing.
Project.
and, you know, that money will probably sit for a little bit. I mean, we're not gonna, I don't know if it'll sit for a year, you know, to get the full 25 grand, but you get the idea.
You told us that before.
Oh, yeah.
You might have
Yeah.
told me.
Wait until September.
Not great.
Should have
It's
just-
big numbers, they're big numbers.
So is that what it's-
They're bigger than the numbers in my
Yeah.
account. Yeah.
So,
I would hope so.
just for Eric being a newer member, I'm gonna just say a couple things, okay? So on taxes, the town budgets to receive 99% of its outgoing bills. There is no town in the state of Connecticut that budgets 100%, okay? So we have a good collection rate, obviously, so that's 101 of the 99%. State of Connecticut revenues, you can see, we actually expected to receive about 540,000. I don't, you know,
ECS came in higher unexpected.
oh,
We talked about
ECS
that
came in,
last
right.
meeting.
came in a little
Yeah, I
high,
was surprised.
Educational cost share, so, you know, it's somewhat unpredictable. I don't think we received 621 last year. I think it was less.
Mhm.
And on local revenues, we've had a bit of a boom over the last 2 years with building permits and real estate conveyance transfers. You know,
That's gonna slow down.
yeah, it's $1 million surplus on revenue, but it's also hard when you start saying, oh, okay, let's just assume we're gonna receive that next year. I mean, the year you
No.
don't receive that money, you know, in building permits plummet. You know, people, I hate to say it, people start buying less homes or, you know, and those revenues plummet. You know, we're gonna be a lot closer to these numbers. So just to. Okay.
Any further questions for the treasurer?
No, thank you.
Oh, you're good.
Okay, we'll move on to the finance director's report.
Okay, thank you. I also have a written report here. So this report is as of June 30th, and as the treasurer mentioned, we are not done processing all of our expenditures yet. The revenues are complete, actually, I know that for sure. But we still have a few things that we're processing, so I'll get to that in a moment. I'm just gonna, as typical, just go over the things that have changed since last month. So on page 1 of the finance director's report, under capital non-recurring, just to note that at last month's Board of Finance meeting, that you did all approve an appropriation for electric vehicles. And that still has yet to go to town meeting, but ultimately I expect that it will hopefully be approved.
Can I just note, not for electric vehicles, but for electric vehicle charging
Chargers,
stations.
oh, that's a very good catch.
Yeah.
Thank you,
I'll make that clear.
very good catch, yes, no. Carl is not driving around in a Tesla, no. Okay,
For $5,000.
for $5,000, yes. Okay, page 2, fiscal year 22 performance. So if we were to cut the books off right off at June 22nd, June of 30, 2022, the general government had budgeted $17.3 million and we have spent 16.1 through June 30. So that means that we have 1.1 million left to be spent, and I will give an accounting on that in just a couple moments, but that's where we were when we finished the fiscal year for period 12. In terms of cash flow, we did not have a lot of activity. In the general fund, we had a plus of 800,000. The reason for that is because of advanced collections for tax receipts for fiscal year 23. We got about $4 million in, which is really strong. It's not untypical, but it is certainly strong collections before the tax season has even begun. So that helped us to have a positive balance for the general fund in cash flow terms for the month of June. Capital funds minus 182,000 versus last month. That was primarily sidewalk construction. We paid some bills there, so we've had a lot of work done on our sidewalks, and reserves and non-major funds. There was actually not a lot of major moves or anything significant to report on. So all told, for all of our funds, we are $600,000 greater than we were the month before. Moving down to capital outlays for fiscal year 22. During the month of June, there was actually nothing that happened there, so I'm not going to report on anything. But I will report under capital expenditures for fiscal year 22. You can see that if you go to the total line, we budgeted 588,000. We used 607,000, so we actually spent more than we budgeted. That is due to the fire department. They put out a purchase order for a vehicle for 30,000. They committed to it in fiscal year 22. And so that they don't have the car yet or whatever they've bought yet, but it will be part of a fiscal year 22 transaction. So so that's under the capital expenditures.
Did they actually sign a contract for that?
I believe so, yes.
No idea what they're getting.
I don't know. Do you know?
I don't know, but I can find out.
Just curious.
Is that from a few meetings ago when Joe was here?
Yep.
And under pension plan, you know, we did do our final sweep of pension dollars to be put into the pension plan, and actually it came up to 817,000 versus our 813. So we did make our ADC for this past fiscal year. So very happy to have that occur. If you will now turn to the next page, and if you could look at the column that says current fiscal year percent of budget, it's kind of like the one right in the middle. And then go down, anything that's over 100%, I'm going to speak to. So the first one is the treasurer, 102%. That's just taxes, a couple of taxes, it's not much. It's just the percentage is larger because it's a smaller amount. Moving on down to the next 100%, architectural review board, slightly over their budget, no concerns there. ZBA, 122.1. I think they had some lawsuits going on there, so that pushed it over their budget, but it's really, if you look at it, 13.4 versus 16.4. It's not material in terms of dollar amounts. We have talked about insurance in the past. We were about $15,000 over because we bought the cyber insurance after budget season ended. So that pushed us to 104.
And but we bought it after budget season ended because it didn't come to us until after budget season ended. And we put it together like in June of last year. And we're definitely gonna have cyber coverage, I can tell you that. And we have coverage, we have a $25,000 deductible, $1 million coverage.
Yes, I believe that's
I think,
correct. Yes.
And the big deal with cyber coverage is the forensics on it, not necessarily the losses on it. It's more if identities are stolen or if there's a breach like that, having a team to assist with that is the expense. You know, as you know, the extortion is usually 25,000. I mean, it's not a ton of money. There's a $25,000 deductible option, 50,000. We chose the 25. We split it with the Board of Education to do it. But let me tell you, there are towns operating without cyber coverage out there in Connecticut, and I know that for a fact. And I don't know how you sleep at night, to be honest with you. So.
We're happy to have that coverage. Moving on down the list, we get to the PD department, but we have to look at those three because that's the department that's broke down into three sub-departments. So that the police department is not over budget. We add all three together.
Thank you.
What were do we know what the expenditures were that pushed it over for that
For that
category?
one
Yes.
category, I'd have to look it up, but I don't
I didn't
know
know if you know.
exactly what it is.
Okay, never mind.
But I mean, yeah, fuel is one of them, because they went over budget with fuel, I know that for a fact. Tree warden, we went over budget, about $8,000, or at 114% there. Highway and streets, we went over a little bit with the paving budget and the price of goods and services, fuel, all of those things were more expensive than originally planned. Engineering budget, we are over by 22,000, so we're at 116%. I know that Carl has talked a lot about the expenses that we've been incurring in our engineering budget. Public Works vehicle and maintenance is 120%. That's over by about 16,000, again, more expensive for parts and things like that, getting them. Waste collection over by 2,000, that is going to be over budget. The Public Health Nursing Board, during budget season, I think you recall that the BNA expenses were a lot higher, and they did go over because of that, about $4,000. Moving on down to Vicky Duffy, 151% there. That's 6.3 thousand, and that made budget 12.3, made it that expensive.
What happened
higher.
there, Carl?
I'm sorry?
What happened there?
That was a communications services that they put in, and I think it was the communication Wi-Fi and things like that down there. I believe that's what it was. And higher cost just for maintaining the building. Combination of both.
And the Wi-Fi wouldn't be covered under some of these things that are available through ARPA?
I actually don't know the issue well enough with the Duffy Pavilion. I know you've been talking to Ray a little bit about it.
He calls it communicate. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know.
We could have him
exactly.
come in
We'll
and
have him
explain
come
it.
in.
You know, I mean, I think it should be, but at the end of the day, I mean, you know, we're gonna have well, go ahead. I'll let you finish your report. I'll let you finish your
All right.
report.
Parks, other parks, again, more expensive to maintain. That's up about 13,000 over budget. Our budget is 65,000. And then if you go to the second page, we have transfer station. And again, we add the two transfer station. We have transfer station operations, and then we have the cost for disposal of the waste. Operations are over, and the waste is under. That's going to come in about even when all is said and done in the transfer station.
So are we collecting more trash or less trash?
About the same amount. So what Leanne's referring to, for instance, at the PD, if you look at the transfer station, the first three digits are 840. So that's the department, and that's how we typically determine whether a department is $25,000 or more over or under. The magic number being 25. If we're over 25,000 expended, we have to go to town meeting. Board of Finance has to approve it, and then we go to town meeting. We haven't had to do that in years. It used to be, when I was chairman of the Board of Finance, a relatively common occurrence. And we've tried to budget better over the last 7-8 years, to the point where we have not had to have the Board of Finance approve an appropriation of more than 25,000 to go to town meeting. What we typically did, I think I did it early on, and we'd have the Board of Finance approve it. We would do it at the annual town meeting, which is the fourth Monday in November. So we look at it by department, not by sub-department. You know, budgets are sometimes funny things. Some go over, and as you can see, many are going to be under. So for the same reason that some go under, some stay under. You spend less on legal, you might spend less on maintenance, you might have had a personnel move, or a lot of them are right where they should be. You know, they're in the 90s, 96. But I don't know if you want to talk further about the budget, because
Well,
we
let me
still have a
just-
lot of bills to pay.
Yeah, let me just say a few more things, then I
Yeah.
can let you go back to
No.
what other comments you want to make. And I was gonna say some of those same things that Carl said. This year, I cannot remember in the past few years where we have been pushing these budgets like this, having several of them going over 100% their budget target. Right now, there are no budgets that are over the $25,000 mark, but then again, and I don't think there's going to be, but I'm not going to say there's not, because we don't have all of our final bills in, and so when that's said and done, then we will report on them. And again, it is due to the excess costs associated with these unexpected inflationary things that have occurred. And you can see it mainly in the budgets that, like Public Works, that buy fuel, that buy paving and things like that, that are just all of those expenses that are associated with those goods are just higher. So that's what it is. And so I'm going to make my first projection now at what the surplus may be for the town. So we know the reserves for the revenues, are I'll call it 1.1 million. So as of today, I took a look and we still had $500,000 that of the budget, if you just forget about the overages and underage, $500,000 to the good that still could be spent. We have about $250,000 that I know of. And then we have $45,000 of retro pay because of a contract that, and I don't know if you want to speak more about that or if you already have, but a contract that was just negotiated. We have to pay retro pay that's due, should be booked into fiscal year 22. So it's 300,000. So I think if about $200,000 we will not have spent on our expenditure budget. So 1.1 in revenues surplus, and I'll call it a 200,000 in expenditure surplus. So we're looking at a town-wide surplus of 1.3 million at this point in time, and that could change, but that's my
So the
estimate.
200,000, I mean, it's relatively tight. It's not, we've had larger numbers in the past. This year,
Yeah.
Leanne has been talking to me for a month saying, I'm a little worried that we might go over on the expenditure side. So we're still waiting for numbers to come in. As of the 500,000 that is out there, we know there's about 300,000 that is going to still be paid. And so that's why Leanne is estimating on the expenditure side about a $200,000 surplus on, 26 million.
Right, for just the town, not including Board of Ed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or on 2020.
Why are you saying 500,000 where on this sheet it's closer to $1 million?
So this sheet was the cutoff date of June 30,
Right.
and we have what we call the 13th month where we put all these transactions that are due for last fiscal year in there. Excuse me. So, for example, the water hydrant bill, that's like 58 grand. And we have 2 months that is in arrears, so that's $100,000 right there. So all of these expenses such as that get into the 13th month. So we were at 1.1 million. We've already spent $600,000 with lots of larger ticket items such as that. And as you all hear me say, it's about $3 million, a month to keep this place, $3 to $3.5 million a month to keep this place running. So those extra expenses, the portion that did not get paid is part of the amount that brought it down to 500,000 as of today. And now I still know about 300,000 that is going to be expensed. That gets me to 200,000.
Okay, so what about Leanne's wish list?
Or, that's a Carl's going to do the wish list.
Oh, I figured you guys have already figured it out, so I figured you could at least give us some insight.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna recommend a couple things, but ultimately, it's your board, that. But yeah,
So what are you thinking about?
well, we're
I'm
not.
done.
We're not.
You're not done yet?
Yeah, I'm done. If you wanted to move on.
Thank you, Lean.
Any other
I
questions?
have a question. On this waste transport disposal,
Mhm.
it's down 19%. Is it down because of less trash or less cost?
I
Well,
think-
that's one of the categories that we have some large bills coming in.
Okay.
So
it's
that's
not a
gonna go
cost.
up to you. That's kind of
Okay.
not fair to look at that.
That's
So
my question.
the transfer station is gonna be, between those two areas is gonna be a break even.
Well, I just hear about trash costing more
It is costing more.
than.
What about- What about the funds from the vehicles that got sold from the PD? Where are we at with that?
We have received 37,000, and so I think we have 7,000 more to go till we get hit the 42,000.
44. Be 5,000 more.
Thank you.
But we're not just stopping there. He's-
No,
No.
we're selling, they're all
So I
online.
think the original.
That's 3 cars.
The original target was to raise 42 from the sale of the cars, and it looks like it's gonna be far exceeded.
That's a good problem.
That's
I
good.
know.
I'm glad to hear.
I
that.
know, isn't that crazy? I mean, just because of this nutty market, you know?
Another question for Dean.
I'm sorry.
While we're talking about vehicles, where is the big truck that came from Long Island that was purchased for the WPCA? And then our mini excavator, I think was the WPCA.
Yep.
So I know we transferred maybe the mini excavator over to Public Works.
So
Oh, okay. So how about the white truck, the big white truck?
it's over at Public Works.
Okay, we're not gonna sell that, we're gonna hang on to it.
It's, you know, that's a good question, Tom. I'm not so sure we can sell that at this point.
I just have to think
Because
about
we're
it.
not doing field work anymore. We bought that for field work.
Right,
So- Yeah, let me look into that.
What
I
about
totally
the-
forgot about that truck.
What about the vehicle with blown motor at the fire department?
With the what?
Doesn't it have a blown motor? The old fire marshal's vehicle didn't that have a motor shot or had serious issues?
You mean which one? The
Prior.
the-
prior.
The
Explorer?
Yeah,
don't know anything about it.
might want to ask.
Okay.
and I see also that street lighting is looking pretty good,
Mhm.
so it's way down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
looks really good.
Okay. Have we not
Pleased with that.
had any expenditures for changing light
Oh,
bulbs?
we've
and
yeah.
had plenty of expenditures.
Okay,
Plenty,
Yeah.
plenty. And not only that, Eversource will come in because we only own like part of the arm to the light. And Eversource will come in and change out their infrastructure, and they bill us now that we own the lights. So we are still getting bills from Eversource for repairs, and we pay them out of that account.
but we're still hiring the outside guy to come and change the bulbs.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else have any?
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
Oh, I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I know you don't report on behalf of the Board of Education,
Mhm.
and I should ask the question when the superintendent was here, but do you know whether or not there is any fund surplus in the Board of Education for fiscal year 22?
I think there's going to be one. I only know that what they had as of June 30, and they're going through the same
Same process.
exercise, but there was over $1 million. I don't know.
They're gonna have surplus.
I don't know what that is going to.
It's not gonna be like in years past, but they're gonna have surplus. I think it's gonna be in the lower 6 figures. I believe. I don't have a number though either.
Any issues with the lights?
Sorry?
Any issues with the light installation?
No, I was gonna briefly, I'm happy to mention that.
Nice segue. Good job, Eric.
Yeah, the lights went up at the field, as everybody knows. They went up once, well, nothing went up quickly, but I guess they went up quickly once they got there. Julie Pendleton deserves a lot of credit coordinating this. This was a massive coordination project. So I want to give credit there where credit is due. You know, it's amazing. The lights went up and I said, do the lights now need to be adjusted? But they are shipped exactly as they're going to shine, which is hard to believe because you would think they would move in transit.
Yeah.
But they are up, they are not operable right now. There's a couple more parts to go, but I went on the field a couple times while they were doing it, and pretty massive operation. Public Works was helpful, but we are on schedule for fall lights to be operable. So that'll be exciting.
Oh, these are fixed lights, right? They don't move
They are fixed
with
lights.
play.
They are fixed.
Okay.
Well, that would be annoying.
The remote to shine on the neighbor's house.
Stop
Oh,
it.
don't start.
Do not say that.
It's actually really interesting technology. If you go up to Hartford and you ever drive or go to where the Hartford Athletic play, they have almost the identical lights that were put in here. And when you walk down the street, you know, years ago, you'd walk to a stadium and it like lights up 10 city blocks. The streets are almost dark as you walk up to the
Because it's just
stadium.
like this.
It is really,
Yeah.
yeah, it's unbelievable actually to see it.
But you don't have to go to Hartford. Yeah, you can go to Middletown. They have a field that had, I mean, this is what people are this is what towns and private facilities are putting in. So anyway, everybody saw those went up. It's pretty wild to look over there and see it. Just a couple other things before I go with the surplus. Beaver Dam Trail, the chief is working pretty hard with FEMA. We're gonna be meeting with FEMA about funding opportunities on that. I'll report more when I have more information from FEMA, but that is, right now, they're estimating, our engineers estimating that to be 1.3 million. I mean, if you went to Beaver Dam Trail and looked at the job, you'd be like, how is this a $1.3 million job? It's staggering to look at it and say it can't be. So we're looking at that. The problem is with that, everybody know Beaver Dam Trail where it goes. The culvert runs diagonally down the road and it can't go across the road because it goes into private property there and it has to run diagonally. So it's a long culvert, whereas it'd be great if it could be a 20-foot culvert. So I'll have more information on that as that develops, but obviously we spent a ton of money on engineering last year. We would get some of that back, whether we get 75% or 90% back if FEMA accepts the project. If it's a $1 million project, there's still either $100,000 to $250,000 out of pocket. So at some point, we'll have better ideas as to what's going to be funded, what's not going to be funded. We are working on a steep grant. In fact, I anticipate having a steep grant submitted. The deadline is August 15th. I believe it's August 15th. We're going to have it submitted by, I believe, next Wednesday. Jennifer and I and Jeff Jacobson have been going back and forth on it. The grant is to do sidewalks from the Westbrook town line to Spencer Plain Road to get, we had to come up with a quick project. I know it's sidewalks, I know it's kind of boring, but that would be hugely helpful to the Vista community over there. There's over 50 folks and more, 50 that live in the Vista housing. There are additional Vista folks who live in that area and they work and shop and do a lot of things over there. So it's not just to help them. The idea is to then connect the sidewalks all the way to the Dairy Queen, where we just finished a sidewalk project. And that would connect the beach areas and make it a lot more walkable. If people wanted to walk to Alforna or to Big Y, of course, the Benny's Plazas is going to get redeveloped eventually. There is a developer interested. So it's employment opportunities, it's walkability. So that's the project we chose for this steep grant. We have over 25 letters of support for this project. I think it's a really strong project. I think there's a very good chance we'll get it because it affects a community that needs them. And by the way, I've been getting letters and solicitations on completing that part of sidewalks for years. This isn't something we came up with in May. For 5 years, I've been getting solicited from Westbrook people and from the Vista community saying, sidewalks to Old Saybrook are critical. I believe it's a 12-minute walk and a 5-minute bike ride. So very walkable.
And if you don't go out there early in the morning, then you
Oh.
won't see the geese that cross in front of you by the hotel there all the time either. There's supposed to be a dozen geese that stop traffic.
Every morning.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
So we need a
I'm not a
two-spot.
better-
Not our purview.
They're gonna use the sidewalk now.
Yeah, so you just decide-
Or
at the crosswalk.
So Carl, have we ever looked into with the sea level rise and the funding that's coming out for infrastructure to go after some money to do something along Gray Hammock Road, and whether it's a bulkhead on the southern side, and if there happens to be 4 feet extra put in for that structure to protect the waterway or the roadway, we could put a sidewalk all the way down to the town beaches. So we don't have the hazards that we continually have on a regular basis.
So I'm sorry, you're talking about a sidewalk?
I'm talking, if you were to go for funding to put like sheeting, I'm talking about the slip sheeting as like a bulkhead to protect the infrastructure of the roadway and also protect everything on the other side of the roadway that goes right into all the neighborhoods. And if it was a little bit higher, and then if it was 4 feet from where it currently is, which would be about right, you could then put a nice sidewalk right down that side all the way to the town beaches.
So, I've had a couple folks say to me, wouldn't it be great to have a boardwalk from where the sidewalk
Well,
ends?
that's kind of what,
On the interior though, not on the exterior.
yeah, but it's doing on the exterior, you can get funding from the feds because you're protecting infrastructure.
Yeah, I don't. That would be a massive. That has to be
Gotta start somewhere.
tens of millions, yeah.
Maybe not, if you chunk it up.
Yeah. Have not. I have thought about on the interior sidewalk. So one of the requests you're gonna see that I'm for surplus funding is Chris Costa came to me and said, there's so many grants that seem to be coming. Why don't we put $50,000 aside for engineering, not in the budget, but just to engineer projects that aren't funded yet? So one of them that we're talking about is to put a sidewalk in from Henny Penny towards the Staples. So connecting that loop. And we brought it to Jeff Jacobson, and Jeff sent us pictures of exactly what he did in Woodbury, something very similar. So I'm not gonna be able to describe how they do it, but they do it.
And when they do it, they go to the wood guardrail, so it doesn't look industrial too. It's got more of a
Yes.
small town.
Right,
Yeah. seen that.
so that would be something that we don't have money for it right now, but that would be a connectivity grant that we've gotten in the past, and that would be perfect for it. So anyway, we got as you know, we got $500,000 to redevelop the site behind the pickleball courts, behind the police station and the pickleball courts, okay? We have that 1.3 acres. And we received a grant for $500,000. So I called Martin Heft at OPM, and I said, this is like 6 weeks ago, and I said, hey, Marty, I've never been contacted by anybody. I saw the line in the bond package, Old Saybrook, $500,000. I said, but no one's, I don't know, and he put me in touch. This is a month ago now, he put me in touch with someone from Deep. And so I said, thank you, and then I said, hey, Brian, love to talk about this, what's a good time? Never heard anything. This morning, I was with my dog and we cut through St. John, and I'm looking at that and I'm like, God, that guy never got back to me. I emailed him again today, nothing. So I'm gonna give him another day or two. I hate
Sure
to-
he's there.
I'm gonna say maybe you
He
retire.
we
Yeah,
we lost a ton of.
Martin Heft just gave me his name 6 weeks ago. He just gave me.
Yeah, but July 1, we just had another huge.
I'll email, what I'm looking not to do
Copy
is
Martin.
rat him out. I'm not looking to go to Martin Heft to say, this guy never got back to me. So it's on my radar to back out to Martin Heft again. But it's kind of frustrating
If he
because I have a grant
if
and I
you-
want to spend it.
If he emailed and he's left, they put the out of office,
I've emailed them, I've never gotten anything. Nothing,
really?
nothing, I've gotten no response.
What,
Not-
what is the plan back there?
Well, this would not be enough to do the whole thing. There's a lot of site work that needs to be done. So the plan right now would be to put maybe a bocce court, horseshoe court, and also a lot of site work and a sidewalk that eventually goes to Lynn Street. So folks can walk through like that.
How eventually?
Huh?
How eventually?
Well, once I can start spending the money, I can do some of that right there. Park and Rec is developing a potential plan to either make it open space or maybe active recreation, whether it's an ice skating rink, but I don't know that that's a good spot for an ice skating rink.
But the bocce ball court and more other courts won't cut out the access for a sidewalk. We're gonna always keep room for a sidewalk, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of room out there. More than people
1.3
think,
acres,
yeah.
ton of acres.
Is there enough parking?
Probably not. Not in that parking lot, there's not, but on Main Street, I would say there probably is, you know? So you're right, if you put in a, if you went to zoning and said, hey, we want to put in this hugely popular thing, I don't know that you have enough parking on site for the use, okay? So it may end up being more passive recreation, maybe it's a bandstand, you know, maybe it's a shell. And maybe we do some events back there during the year. That's up to Park and Rec. Janet was here, not Susan. So they have not come up with a plan for that yet. Okay,
About bike racks. There's like not a single bike rack on Main Street.
yeah, there is. There's one right by Porter Plaza.
It's broken.
Is it?
It's not a great one.
Okay.
But I mean, and I say that because there's a lot of bikeable residences to Main Street. And if you walk down the sidewalk on a Friday evening or a Saturday, and there's 20 kids at Sweet Luna's or this place,
Bikes are all
there's
over
nowhere
the
to put their
place.
bikes and they're all out on
Yeah.
the sidewalks.
I don't know
And then
what-
the cars pull up like this,
I know. I
they're
don't-
5 feet over and there's no room to walk.
So bike racks on the sidewalks are very difficult.
Oh, somewhere though.
Yeah.
There's space at the park, the parking lot or other places.
Yeah. There's one tenant on Main Street who definitely wants a bike rack. It's a question of where to put it. I made a note of that. I talked about the Cape Museum. I just want to give a shout out to our tax collection office. Don't forget, we lost our tax collector on April 1 and our assistant tax collector on May 20th. And we haven't missed a beat. In fact, it's been modernized somewhat in the tax office. They're doing a great job over there. And I really give them a lot of credit because they were both just thrown into it. So,
Have you gotten any pushback on the vehicle, motor vehicle?
you know, I ask, and not a lot yet. I don't doubt there will be some appeals, but I haven't gotten a lot. I haven't had not one call. I ask the tax office if they're getting pushback and they're saying not a lot. I'll check with the assessor. I do periodically check to see if people are inquiring. All right, so with regard to the surplus, a couple ideas. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we keep our reserves at 17%. And what is that number, Leanne? I think you,
Yeah,
it's,
so we have 8 million and change at present at 17%. And with the budget that we have approved for this year, we'd have to bring it up to 8,224,000 or an increase of 185,000. So to stay level, increase.
so about, so that's what we recommend first, okay? Is keeping it where it is at 17%, the reserve funds. Okay?
Change our borrowing rate yet? So we get a lower borrowing rate?
So,
The rates are going up.
yeah, that's right.
That story.
So we are Moody's rated, and we're 2 ticks down from AAA. Okay. If we wanted to switch ratings agencies and go to S&P, we could probably get AAA. If we wanted to go to Fitch, so when you read that towns like Old Lyme maybe are AAA rated, if they were rated by Moody's, and Leanne can speak to this a lot better than me, but this is what our financial advisor has told us. When you have a AA2 from Moody's, it's as good as anything else with a rating agency that might be a little bit more liberal in their AAAs.
I didn't know as we continue to put the surplus, whether or not we get looked at again to bring us up.
So not with Moody's, we won't, and it's because of who we are. We're commercially, we're not a massive, we don't have a massive tax base.
We're a small town, right, and we're highly influential by the state of Connecticut's rating, even though it doesn't affect us specifically, so they're just not gonna increase it. It is as good as it's
But
gonna
we're doing
get.
good overall.
And we're doing good, and they did recognize that last time we had a review. They made a lot of positive comments about what we've done with our long-term liabilities, paying down our debt, with a lot of debt decreases scheduled for the future, all the things that we've done with our pension plan. All of that they said, good job, but we're not gonna we're not gonna increase your rating, so.
Okay, so I'll just run through these. I'd like to put some more additional funding into sidewalks. We've done this every year. I'm recommending $250,000. So you can start adding it up here. So $250,000 for sidewalks. We are recommending, or I am recommending, I haven't brought it to the Board of Selectmen yet, that we transfer funds from the debt service stabilization fund, the entirety of it, to a pension stabilization fund, which is $312,000. So it's my thought at this point, okay? It's not Board of Selectmen recommended, not Board of Finance. And that is because we have so much debt coming off over the next 5 years that I don't know that I see a need for this. Even if we have a $25 million bond that we had to do, if we have to do a large WPCA project, that's still 2% money. We're not borrowing with, a bank. We can fund with the debt relief that will be coming off over the next 5 years, okay? So that was a recommendation. I'd like to put some money aside to repave some of the parking areas on Main Street. So I pulled into Gargano's today, the old Denali building. They're gonna open next week.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wonderful.
And I went in, doors open, I went in, they're stocking,
Really?
which is good. I met the assistant manager. But when I pulled into the parking area on Main Street, right in front of it, there's a depression. So this would take care of like 3 or 4 of the worst spots, okay, in town, where we cut them out and repave that area. Larry wants to spend his money on roads, which is where we should spend it. So this would be extra money designated specifically for that.
There's one in front of Essex Golf too.
Yeah, stuff like
A lot
that.
of them.
Yeah.
How much
Right
money
in
was
front of
that?
walls.
Just
There's a
100
huge one in
grand,
front
and
of
it would get
walls.
some of them done. It
Please
wouldn't
get
get
that
all of
one
them
done.
done, it would get a few done.
So a huge one in front of walls too,
In front of walls, okay.
please.
Engineering, you heard me say, I was thinking maybe put 50,000 aside, strictly for engineering projects that would be shovel-ready projects. And that thought isn't fully developed. It was Chris Costa came to me one day, she said, why don't we put some money aside for future projects? Because maybe there's gonna be a grant come out next year, and at least we have a wish list of projects that we might want to get done. We can start engineering some of them, and if the appropriate grant comes out, apply for them, or maybe fund it at some point through town funds.
So why not take it to the next level and also put in a grant writer to look for the funds that are out there, to write the grant, because a lot of the grants are, you can fund back the cost of the grant writer.
Yeah, that's true. The grant writer sometimes pays for themselves. The COG, I had a meeting, we had a meeting today. We're gonna have a full board meeting next week. The COG is actually looking into hiring a grant writer.
Okay.
For our area.
Okay.
Actually, exactly for that, to look for grants.
There's a lot out there.
We talked about it this morning. Okay. So I called Kathy Connolly today and I said, Kathy, I'm gonna try to, Kathy Connolly is a very passionate person about native plants and invasives. And I'm recommending that we put $50,000 aside for vegetation management. And this would be assisting on town properties or maybe partnering where somebody wants to put up a match, maybe a neighborhood association, put up a match to remove invasives on the property and replant native plants. So once you remove them, you got to put something back. Kathy said that will, if you were to do this professionally, that would probably get you 15 acres. There are certain problem areas in town. I would probably have Kathy come in and address it. It's a big issue. There's not only Phragmites, but there's the hogwort. There's all kinds of stuff out there, and they're on town properties. And this would be an off-budget fund. It would be spent all at 1 year, obviously. I don't think, but it would. The Conservation Commission is also looking for some projects. So Kathy might be able to work with the Conservation Commission to identify certain areas that are problem areas. It's an idea. It's something I threw out there. Kathy can address it further. It would also be perhaps vegetation management, replanting in areas where maybe flood management, some infrastructure management, where we can put in green infrastructure. We were thinking of adding to the town's contingency this year. So we normally put 25 or 30 aside into the town's contingency fund. The budget's already done, maybe adding 30,000 to contingency for inflation. And knowing that at the end of the year, we would take some of maybe no more than 30 or, to offset any obvious overages as a result of inflation. It's an idea. So getting back to Eric's question, Park and Rec came in with a wish list through the ARPA fund. The wish list totaled about $320,000 to $350,000. Two of the bigger projects on there were paving the Harvey's Beach parking lot. And I think that number was about $120,000. And another one was converting the basketball court at Trask Park into pickleball courts. And I think that was about $140,000. Eliminating those two larger expenses, whether you want to or not, there were 8 other projects that I thought were excellent projects that were quality of life projects for the town of Old Saybrook. 2 of them being upgrading the bathrooms at the town beach and at Harvey's Beach. That was about $50,000. Upgrading the water park, the splash pad to current standards. Apparently it's not current standards. It would be a cement base as opposed to what they have now. I think that project was about $25,000. Some of the other ones were just simple amenities. I know I spoke to a member of this board who wasn't in favor of some of them, but it was solar charger powers at our beaches, getting better Wi-Fi access. And excluding the pickleball courts and the paving of Harvey's Beach, it was about $150,000 to do these 8 other projects. And I don't have them right in front of me. I meant to bring them, I didn't. Here we go. Public Wi-Fi access at the parks and beaches, technology upgrades to the Vicky Duffy Pavilion, cell phone charging station at the beaches and parks, resurfacing of the splash pad, upgrades to the bathrooms at both beaches, and a fencing upgrade at mini golf. So those totaled 50,000 or 149,000. The biggest of them being Wi-Fi at the beaches for 40 grand, 60,000 for the splash pad resurfacing. And so anyway.
Carl, they gotta deal with the parking before they add something as popular as pickleball down there. Tonight it was packed again.
Well, when they do softball games, Park and Rec does softball. So how do you add to the parking?
Well, you don't add more of an attraction if you don't have the parking for
Right,
it.
right.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
Geez, they will be playing at night. When
Oh, sure
there's,
they will.
yeah, that's, I don't know that they thought about that. to be
And you got the houses right across the street.
Yeah. So this doesn't add any this doesn't add any attractions by doing what we're recommending. I'm not
You just add a
recommending.
pickleball.
How, you just said you're gonna put pickleball
No,
courts.
It's not recommended.
I said I'm not recommending a
Oh.
pickleball court.
Oh, okay.
Avoided that. Could you turn that area into parking? Where the basketball?
If
court
they're not
is?
using the basketball courts,
The
which
basketball
I
court,
think the kids
they're
use it. to be
Very
honest with you, but-
underused.
It is, that's why they were talking about.
Nobody
making
really
pickleball.
uses it.
That's
Rarely.
exactly.
Why wouldn't they put the pickleball courts up at Schoolhouse Road?
And where?
Schoolhouse Road, up at Clark Park. But there's a ton of land and a ton of parking.
So. Anyway, they are talking about additional pickleball courts, but one of the ways they're gonna get there is restripe the tennis courts so that they can be used both as pickleball courts and tennis courts. So, I've had a lady email me for 2 years, me and Ray, asking for this, and the Park and Rec Commission finally recommended it the other night. So I think that alleviates that demand on the basketball court being converted. There's two other things. Now, we had a meeting last week, Leanne and I, the superintendent, chief of police, Ray Allen, Larry Hayden. All the security cameras at both the schools and in town hall, we have security cameras here. We're on a 2014 platform, needs to be upgraded. So we cannot add any more cameras. And there is a newer software, 2022 software, I think it is. Just to add, we're not even changing out the cameras. Just to upgrade the software and add one camera, which would be, we have to have a camera outside the voter box up there. You have to add one. We can't do that on the current software. Just to add, to take care of what we have, between the Board of Ed and the town, I want to say it was about 130,000, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So what I was going to recommend is 100,000. I thought of that tonight, 100,000 towards upgrade of the security infrastructure software. We would then additionally start looking at putting cameras at other infrastructure in town, Trask Road, but not to be monitored. No one's sitting there watching the pickleball games or the tennis games. If there was an emergency there and you had someone down, broken leg, medical emergency, or some other emergency, they could turn on a camera and have situational awareness. That's the phrase. Maybe we want to have cameras, more cameras. We do have some cameras at mini golf, but at the beaches. Do we want to have cameras at the beaches? And there's other infrastructure in town where we might want cameras. So this would allow us to add on some cameras. Putting it out there, whatever you do, we're going to add 185,000 to the rainy day fund to keep it at 17%. I don't believe the additional surplus should fall to the bottom line. Whatever we bring to you, if you approve it or don't approve it, I would like it to go into the capital non-recurring fund. That way, it still comes before you at a later date. It still needs town meeting approval. It builds that fund for projects. If this board feels like we're not ready to do it, we're not ready to do something yet, it still leaves this board with the power of the purse strings to do it at a later date. So those were some of the ideas that Leanne and I batted around, Park and Rec has batted around. I don't know about you guys, but my phone number must have gotten out in the last week. I have gotten nothing but spam calls for like a week.
Yeah.
And
So you're talking about the cameras. I just did a project equal to what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
By position. And I can tell you that as opposed to upgrading what we had, we actually put out an RFP for replacing the system with the new systems that are out there and what's available and how much they've come down from the time that you originally did yours. It was cheaper for us to replace the entire system and all new cameras than it was to upgrade what we currently have, for what it's worth.
okay,
And it was on that same level.
okay. So they that was briefly discussed and yeah.
Will Larry be in charge of that project?
Larry will certainly have input. Michael Gardner will, he's in IT at the schools. And then, of course, dispatch would have access to the cameras. They do now. That's who. So the schools apparently have like 100,
200.
they have like 200 plus cameras in the schools.
This does not include the schools though, right? Or it does?
This would include the schools. This would get us very close to where we need to be. The schools have over 200 cameras right now. I mean, it's a crazy number. So I don't know that we want to start replacing all the cameras because.
Well, I can give you a name of somebody that I use as a consultant that also bids them too. So if you want somebody to talk to.
Yeah. Where was I going with that? But anyway.
Well, does adding additional cameras at places like Trask Park, Town Park, the beaches, is that part of the reason they want Wi-Fi? Do these cameras require the Wi-Fi connection in
They
order to be
definitely
somewhere?
do, but that wasn't the driving force behind it. It was just that I think there's really bad service down there at the beaches. No?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think the beaches and parks need cell phone chargers and Wi-Fi, but that's just.
Yeah, okay. I
We
mean,
needed it for credit cards and things
Oh,
like other
that's
things
the
that we
other thing.
started to do. We wanted to put like the
At the
cash.
beaches?
Yeah.
Well, for
Transfer
parking
station.
and the concession stands and transfer station. So one of the reasons why we didn't get credit cards put in very quickly, even though we had it on our docket of things to do, was because of all of our Wi-Fi connections. So we've been little by little assessing each of the areas and wanting to put that in so that we can have a
You wanna go
touchless payment.
cashless.
We want to go cashless at some point in the future.
So we would need that. Anyway, so we'll see what the surplus is. We think we have a pretty good idea. It's gonna be over $1 million. Other than $185,000, it should be, we should talk about doing projects. So.
Okay, then we'll move on to the liaison reports. Anybody have any?
Tommy and I went up to the Public Works, met with the Public Works Director, looked at the install of the new furnace up there. There's 2 recommendations that I made to them that were out of, what I feel out of compliance. One was the emergency drain for the blow off for the hot water heater was across the wall, down a cabinet and into a slop sink that all the guys use. Now, if that thing goes off while somebody's working at that sink, they're gonna get burned bad. So I can't believe they even did that to begin with. So hokey, it's not even funny. I mean, it goes across the wall, down a cabinet and into the slop sink.
So is that getting fixed?
I don't know if you gotta talk to Larry. I wasn't gonna tell Larry to do anything. That's your purview. That's your area.
Okay.
The other thing is you got a building that's in an aquifer and they connected to the old copper line. Granted, it has the old rubber protection around it, but it goes underneath the building all the way out to the tank. First of all, you're not supposed to put anything in the concrete, and whoever put it in should have done it to begin with. And why aren't we running it through the building and out to the tank so it's above ground so we can see if there's a leak in our aquifer to deal with it? I don't know why they would do something like that. That just was
I don't know when it was done.
appropriate. No, the new oil burners connected to the old line. that goes
Right.
Through the
Connected to
concrete.
the old one.
Yeah, why wouldn't you put a new line out to the tank? Whatever. Just not a smart move, I think, personally, but Donnie, anything else?
Was other thing else, but it's more of a labor issue than the
Okay.
furnace issue. But I saw what Ricky saw also.
So we could have, so we're part of a loss prevention program with Kerma, where we have Hartford Steam Boiler insures a lot of this, and they have a loss prevention program, and they've gone to the schools, to the fire department, to town hall, and they look at exactly what you're saying and say, hey, this should be done this way, and we are fixing these things, and they are projecting, Kerma is projecting significant loss prevention by doing this program. So I can have them go out to the,
Just for what
see
it's
if they
worth.
make a recommendation.
I mean, if it was my personal list, I'd never let it.
At least Kerma can take a look at it.
Okay. Yeah. Just hoping.
Anybody else? Okay, comments from board members?
It's more of a question than a comment. Wasn't quite sure where to have it on the agenda, and that is, on a number of public boards that I've been on over time, there is kind of a policy about when you are representing yourself in public, whether you're representing as a citizen or as a board member. And I just didn't know, do we have a policy about that for the Board of Finance where, if I got up in front of zoning and, said I'm a member of the Board of Finance, to me, that implies I'm representing the board, the Board of Finance. And so it seems to me it would be better if we didn't do that, but I just didn't know whether we had a policy one way or the other.
If we didn't do what?
If we didn't, when we're making public comment,
Oh.
if we did not say we're from the Board of Finance, unless the Board of Finance has made a vote, if we have a collective consensus on something.
I know when I speak to a group and I say I'm speaking as a member, one member of the Board of Finance and not for the Board of Finance as a whole, I think I have a right to do that. And I think that there's no problem with that because I am a member of the Board of Finance and I'm speaking for myself as a member of the Board of Finance about an issue that could come before the Board of Finance. But if I said out loud that I'm speaking for the Board of Finance, I think that would be different.
Okay, no, I understand. I'm just-
And I think that if everybody just follows those basic rules, because I think it's important that,
Full disclosure.
yeah. Because some of the board meetings that I go to, like it's particularly one, I'm the liaison. That's what I'm there for. And I should inform them that that's why I'm there.
Okay.
Anything else from anybody?
I think we're all reasonable, mature adults here. And we can ask ourselves-
Some of us. Speak for yourself.
In a respectful way.
Okay, is there any more public comment? Anybody?
There's no public.
There's no public.
Yes, there is.
Not there.
There's one person.
No, I'm saying
on
on
the
the-
public.
on the-
Okay, no comments from the chair. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.